That's when you put a spell on me, baby. Got me mesmerized. Got me mesmerized.
All right, thrill seekers. That was a little snippet of the song Mesmerized from the second Dementia 13 album. Look at the flash on that. Mirror Mind. And I have this idea of maybe recording all of the songs from Mirror Mind again, because I feel like the album cover is great, but the contents of the album, I feel like I should redo them because I didn't get it quite right the first time. Anyway, maybe I'll be doing more as the time goes along. So for today's episode, I know I promised you I'd talk about Buddhism and idealism, and I'm going to see what I can say about that. But I feel like this is a big topic, and it's going to be difficult to get into the way I want to get into it. And maybe it's going to take a lot of work to really cover this topic. So by way of starting off, I just thought, just going to go in, raw and unprepared and read you something from the Zen teachings of Huang Po, one of my favorite books about Zen. And if you're playing along at home, this is from the first section, which is the Chun Chao record, and it's number 7. I don't know how this works out, but it's number 7. So if you're looking at the book, page 34. The building up of good and evil both involve attachment to form. Those who, being attached to form, do evil have to undergo various incarnations unnecessarily, while those who, being attached to form, do good, subject themselves to toil and privation equally to no purpose, which is controversial stuff. So, Ziggy, what are you barking at? You barking at me? I don't know what he's barking at. Anyway, he doesn't like that, and it's probably because it's such a controversial sort of idea. Like, evil and good are both equally useless. Now, Dogen has a different take on that. I don't know that Dogen's take is necessarily different, but he comes at this from a different angle. As I pointed out in my book, Don't Be a Jerk, Dogen says, that the highest Buddhist teaching is Showaku Makusa, don't enact wrong. So, don't enact wrong is the highest Buddhist teaching, and that's a slightly different thing from what Huang Po is saying here, because Huang Po is talking about doing good or evil because of some kind of attachment to form, some kind of an idea that you're going to get something out of it. So that's what he's talking about. So Dogen is talking about not trying to get something out of it, just doing what's right no matter what. So that's another big question that we're not going to answer in a 20-minute video. In either case, it is better to achieve sudden self-realization and to grasp the fundamental Dharma. Now, here's the part I want to get into. Now, he kind of switches gears, it seems. I've read this like 3 or 4 times this morning, trying to get into it, and it's weird to me that he says this one thing and then completely switches gears here. And maybe there's something I'm missing, but here goes. This Dharma is mind, beyond which there is no Dharma. And this mind is the Dharma, beyond which there is no mind. Mind in itself is not mind, yet neither is it no mind. See, this is typical Zen doublespeak. To say that mind is no mind implies something existent. In other words, whenever you say mind is no mind, I mean, I can imagine somebody out there who, reads a lot of Buddhism stuff, going out there and going, mind is no mind, and being pretentious and going, thinking they got it because they can rattle off that sentence and sound like they know what they're talking about. And that's what he means when he says it implies something existent. It's like you think you got it because you can just say those sentences. So to say mind is no mind is, he's kind of saying, yeah, even if you just say that, it doesn't mean you get it. So he goes on, he says, let there be a silent understanding and no more, away with all thinking and explaining. Then we may say that the way of words has been cut off and movements of the mind eliminated. Now, in other editions of this book, in other translations, they trace that back to, now I've forgotten and I don't have the book with me. It probably doesn't matter to most of you watching this. It goes back to a certain old sutra. So that's actually a quote that Huang Po is pulling out from an even older source. So that's what that is. This mind is the pure Buddha source inherent in all men. Of course, this is an old book from the 50s. It would be inherent in all people, we'd probably say nowadays. All wriggling beings possessed of sentient life, and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are of this one substance and do not differ. So everybody is of this one. So everything, there is one mind that is everybody's. So it's not that you have your mind and I have my mind and Ziggy has his mind and everybody has their own mind and the worms have their minds and the ants have their minds. The idea is there is only one mind. So the one mind looks out from your eyes and looks out from Ziggy's eyes and looks out from my eyes and looks out from everybody's eyes and looks out from that plant's, whatever the plants use to look at the world from. It's all this one mind. It's not these individual minds. That's what he's saying there. Differences arise from wrong thinking only and lead to the creation of all kinds of karma. And the footnote here, I'll just read it to you. Karma, even good karma, leads to rebirth and prolongs the wanderings of the supposedly individual entity, for when good karma has worked itself out in consequent enjoyment, the individual, in quotes, is as far from understanding the one mind as ever. So that's standard sort of Buddhist doctrine. Even good karma is not great. So in other sort of religions, the idea is to accumulate good karma so that you'll have a good incarnation and get better. But in the Zen form of Buddhism, it's taken as a given that even good karma isn't that good because it just puts you back in the same place and you got the same problem all over again. That's the idea behind that. So this mind is no mind is kind of, maybe that's, and I'm just kind of trying to find ways to talk about something that is impossible to talk about, but here goes. Maybe that's where the difference between idealism and Buddhism lies. Now, my teacher, Nishijima Roshi, was very adamant that Buddhism was not idealism and also not materialism. And I say this all the time. I think most people are... It's very easy to grasp the idea that Buddhism is not materialism because we understand kind of what materialism is, or at least my understanding of materialism is the idea that matter is reality. So reality is matter. So the reason that I am able to live and have experience, this would be a kind of a materialistic view as I understand it, is because matter exists. And matter is what makes up my brain and my body. And my body has senses and things, and I can sense the computer screen in front of me that I'm looking at to talk to all of you. And it's feeding in electrical impulses, and that produces a sensation of consciousness in my brain, and the illusion that I am real, and that substance exists, and that everything is coming in from the outside into this internal thing, and that's what makes life happen. That's materialism. Idealism is a little bit harder to pin down. So I spent some time this morning just trying to look up definitions of idealism, and let me give you one. Okay, according to dictionary.com, their first definition of idealism is the cherishing or pursuit of high or noble principles, purposes, goals, etc. Now, that was my understanding of idealism at first, and I think that's not everybody, that's a really common understanding of idealism. When Nishijima Roshi is talking about idealism, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about philosophical idealism. Now, here is dictionary.com's definition of philosophical idealism. Any system or theory that maintains that the real is of the nature of thought, or that the object of external perception consists of ideas. And their second definition is the tendency to represent things in an ideal form, or as they might or should be rather than as they are, with emphasis on values. So it gets complicated and sticky. I looked at one of Nishijima Roshi's older pieces of writings, and what he's talking about when he talks about idealism is the philosophies of Plato and Aristotle and Kant. I know he was often talking about Kant because when he pronounced the name Kant, it tended to sound kind of obscene, because Japanese people, the way they pronounce a short A sounds a little bit like a short U sound. And anyway, you can guess the rest. Anyway, he talked a lot about him, and I never liked hearing him talk about Kant. Anyway, so that's what he was talking about. Now, there's also a more modern strain of idealism, and one of the big proponents of it is Bernardo Kastrup. I've watched a few videos he's done and read about a third of, or maybe a half of this book, one book of his. And reading it, I can say, yeah, this is kind of interesting philosophically to me, and it's hard for me to put a pin on it, but I can go, yeah, interesting but different from Buddhism, because this is what you get to when you try to think your way into it. That's what I feel like. It's not that I would say this is wrong or anything, or, bad philosophy or any of that stuff. But I feel like that's what you get when you try to think your way into it. And what Huang Po is talking about is what happens if you do a practice, if you do a Zazen practice and you have an experience of this, and then you try to relate that experience. So Huang Po is relating an experience of something deeply profound and trying to put that experience into words, whereas a guy like Bernardo Kastrup or probably Kant or Plato and all these other people, they're thinking their way into it. And when you think your way into it, you're kind of limited by what thought can do. And what Nishijima Roshi was always talking about is Buddhism as a philosophy of action. And action, one of the sources of the philosophy is the action of doing Zazen, which, you're sitting still, so sometimes it looks like no action at all, but it is a kind of action. So I don't know if I made any sense at all with that. And like I say, I'm trying to kind of find my way into explaining this, and probably doing a series of videos like this is my way of maybe trying to figure out how to best talk about this, and fumbling my way through. So excuse me, and maybe you'll just enjoy the songs and just a little bit of fumbling and little bits of Huang Po to kind of, just be a little bit of entertainment, on a what is today? Thursday? On a Thursday morning. So there you go. A little bit of entertainment. If you want to pay for this entertainment, if you want to contribute to me making more entertainment like this, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on your screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are my main and usually only ways of making a living, and I appreciate your support, but as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me, because this is offered for free. So we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Laters. Bye. Okay, Ziggy's asleep on the couch again. I promise I'll get you some action shots of Ziggy. He doesn't always just sleep on the couch, but right now that's what he's doing. All right, Ziggy, I'm going to go edit the video. You can continue sleeping on the couch. See you later.
Took my first look at you, baby. I looked into your eyes. That's when you tried to ask me, baby, but I got wise. Then you turned and licked your lips and cut me down to size. That's when you put a spell on me, baby. Got me mesmerized. Got me mesmerized. Somebody must have told you when you were young. Somebody must have spied that you had a special power that could not be denied. 'Cause every time I look at you, baby, just wanna be inside. 'Cause you put a spell on me, baby. Got me mesmerized. You got me mesmerized. That's when you put a spell on me, baby. Got me mesmerized. You got me mesmerized.